Anyone who's played Star Wars The Old Republic would instantly recognize the Giga Chad Sith we're talking about today. In the past, we've talked about many different Sith. Powerful sorcerers, world devourers, plague brewers, you name it. Something they all had in common was how they saw the galaxy as theirs to use for their own personal gain. They were power-hungry warriors and politicians who pursued their own selfish interests. Darth Marr was different. He was a Sith that looked beyond himself as an individual and saw a greater purpose. He had a sense of duty and loyalty no other Sith displayed. A Sith Lord of such motivation that he found enlightenment where few other Sith ever did. In today's video, we'll be discussing Darth Marr's impressive career, his ideals, and how he transcended beyond Sithhood.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Few Sith Lords reached the level of power Darth Marr wielded in his lifetime. Born 3,702 years before the Battle of Yavin in the True Sith Empire, not much is known about Marr's early career. Those who knew the Sith Lord's history tactfully kept their mouths shut after he rose to power. What we do know is that he trained as a Sith warrior and adopted his iconic spiky armor with its faceless mask early on. It was said that no one had ever seen his face. Those who did not live to tell the tale. An iconic story is how he disciplined Moff Zerzian for failing to quell an uprising on the planet Solust. The Moff was summoned to his chambers and, after being dismissed, he submitted his resignation and unalived himself. The rumor was that Marr had removed his mask, which was such a traumatic experience that the Moff was driven to Sudoku. As a weapon, he wielded the legendary Tulak Horde saber after he recovered it on the planet Dromund Fels. In around 3681 BBY, near the beginning of the Great Galactic War, he took a seat on the Dark Council, the Sith Empire's ruling body. He was in charge of the sphere of defense of the Empire, which oversaw deploying the Imperial military to defend the Empire's territory from attack. During his time as a Dark Counselor, Marr participated in many high-ranking Sith operations. He was part of a team that took down the Sith Lord Califo and elevated his apprentice to the Dark Council. In 3660 BBY, he defended both Korriban and Ziost from Republic attack. He was known as the Counselor with the faceless mask that no Republic army could break. By the end of the Great Galactic War, he was one of only 7 Council members that survived the conflict. During the Cold War that followed, Marr, now the de facto leader of the Council, took to strengthening the Empire's defenses in preparation for the inevitable rekindling of war. At this time, Marr's only concern wasn't the increasing tension with the Republic. He focused heavily on controlling the infighting and treachery the Empire was infamous for, but he could only do so much while overseeing a gaggle of stroppy Sith children. Darth Barras and Darth Thanaton were both usurped by younger Sith after they attempted to seize power and were eventually killed. The Battle of Corellia also saw 3 Dark Council members dead. 2 of those were the heads of the spheres of military strategy and offense for the Empire, which meant that Darth Marr was now in complete control of the Imperial Army. Marr was left struggling to stabilize the Empire's leadership, especially since the remaining council members made his life difficult with their petty squabbles. His career, however, wasn't what made Darth Marr stand out as an exemplary Sith leader. What made Darth Marr such a legendary figure was his outlook on life and death, and his stalwart dedication to his duty. You see, unlike other Sith who only thought of themselves, Darth Marr was one of the rare few with a greater vision. He had devoted himself to protecting the Empire and its people, to securing its continuation and prosperity. To this end, he would not hesitate to do anything. To Darth Marr, warfare was a means to an end. He was a zealous believer that, through war, society and people evolved for the better, because, to him, the Empire was in dire need of adapting and evolving. The petty infighting that held their society back for centuries had come to a stop so they could become effective and grow stronger. While he was in control of the Empire's ruling body, he did all he could to stop the political squabbles and backstabbing to secure some level of stability for his people. That said, Marr was by no means a secret softie. He was still a ruthless Sith who wouldn't hesitate to force choke someone. The difference between him and other Sith, however, like his fellow counselor Ravage, was that he didn't haphazardly explode in violence. Rather than flaring out uncontrollably, Marr was the master of his own, with constantly simmering rage that he unleashed only when provoked. He didn't randomly lash out though. He valued competence and punished incompetence harshly. As a leader, he gave his all and expected the same from his subordinates. If they failed to perform their duties, he would not hesitate to kill them for their incompetence. Failure was never an option, nor was cowardice. Interesting to note was that, during the Cold War, Marr was actively dying. His immersion into the dark side had eroded his body and was killing him gradually. It wasn't just his body affected, however. Along his flesh, his ability to feel was also dwindling away until he could barely feel human emotions anymore. Marr didn't even fear death. He also had a unique outlook on life and duty, an excellent example of which could be seen in the way he treated his apprentice, Darth Latris, a capable warrior and politician in her own right. What made them an excellent team, however, was that she understood the bitter necessity of politics as much as her master did. She was his willing pawn, not because she had no choice, but because she understood he used his pieces strategically and not out of wanton stupidity like other Sith did. One example of their teamwork came during the Cold War when the governor of Balmorra was failing to control the planet. Deciding he needed to step in, Darth Marr dispatched his apprentice to take control of the situation. As we saw in The Prince of Power, he didn't just give his apprentice the role of mission lead. Instead, he took the time to caution her against foolish moves and to remind her that foresight is clearer the closer one is to death. To trigger a Force vision of her future, he dueled her until she was on the brink of death. Latris understood that he wouldn't hesitate to kill her if she proved weak, but she was determined to prevail. What she saw in her vision was her own death. Marr understood, but he still sent her off with this final message. You cannot escape death. Consider this my final lesson. Only a coward runs from the inevitable. You are not a coward, my apprentice. Those were his last words to his apprentice, and Latris understood enough to go willingly. Where every other Sith fought against their impending death, Marr embraced it as inevitable. This was, of course, in contrast to his very title. The title Darth was a perversion of the Rakatan phrase Dartar, which meant conqueror of death. He didn't let fear control him. Duty-bound to serve and defend the Empire, he was the truest leader the Empire ever had. His ideals were what helped him find enlightenment in the end. As we mentioned earlier, Darth Marr was loyal only to the Empire. He held no personal feelings toward other people or institutions. What he cared about was how useful they were, and if he judged them detrimental, they were discarded. That's why, when the Order of Revan attempted to resurrect the Sith Emperor in Yavin 4, Marr acted immediately to stop them. Vitiate, the former Sith Emperor, had proven his insanity many times over by this point. Allowing him to return and take control of the Empire would undo all the progress Marr had achieved. Not only did Marr fight against his old master, but he also teamed up with the Galactic Republic to do so. Unlike other Sith, Marr didn't think the Jedi were weak. On the contrary, he thought their Grand Master, Satil Shen, was the only Force user that could be considered his equal. Together, the Republic and Empire put a stop to Revan's plans and prevented the Emperor's resurrection. Unfortunately, the Empire returned anyway. On Ziost, he consumed almost every living being's life force and vowed to do the same to the rest of the galaxy. Again, Marr allied with Satil Shen to stop him. Soon after Ziost, Marr took a joint fleet into wild space where they believed Vitiate and his unknown allies were hiding. The Eternal Fleet, Bzakul's nigh indestructible army of superships, suddenly attacked them and boarded Marr's command ship during the space battle. Although Marr did his best to defend the bridge, it was soon determined that the ship was lost. He and the Outlander, who had led the joint forces against the Revanites, were taken captive, brought to Zakul, and made to kneel in front of Vitiate. Instead of kneeling, however, Marr defied the Emperor one final time, stating he would never kneel to him. The Sith Lord attacked, killing several guards before the Emperor murdered him with Force lightning. That was not, however, the end of Darth Marr. Marr wouldn't be heard of from again until over half a decade later when the Alliance, an organization that came together under the Outlander to fight Zakuul, came to Odessen. The former Outlander, now Alliance commander, wandered through the planet's forest, sensing a familiar presence. There, they came across a camp where they found none other than Satil Shan and Darth Marr. The Jedi Grandmaster had gone into a self-imposed exile, while Marr was actually manifesting as a Force ghost. He had sought her out so they could discuss what had happened and reach some kind of mutual understanding. He revealed that he had lingered behind because he felt guilt for abandoning the Empire. In true Marr fashion, he remarked that his stubbornness on Zakuul had led to his death. Although he did not regret dying, he regretted abandoning his people when they needed him the most. That was why he reached out to Satil. Together, the two had spent years discussing the Force and learning about each other's philosophies. This was to discover what made the Zakuulan Force users so much more powerful than either of their orders. Their conclusion was that the Zakuul Knights did something neither the Jedi nor the Sith did. They didn't focus on the dark or the light side, but rather a balance between both. It was in this balance, walking along the edge, that true power lay. This was the lesson the two legendary warriors had wanted to pass on to the commander in hopes they would use it to kill Vitiate. As an out-of-universe note though, this is what Marr said, but it wasn't accurate. The Zakuulans were Darksiders who didn't embody the light side. Even based off Marr's conclusion, what he was trying to say was that he had embraced the power of the light side, as seen by his parting remark. In life, I dismissed the Jedi Code. I was wrong. There is no death. There is only the Force, and it has a plan. As we've covered in past videos, it's impossible to strike a true balance between dark and light. Nevertheless, what Marr accomplished during his time with Shan was nothing short of a miracle. Out of all the Sith, only Darth Marr and his drive to improvise, adapt, overcome could have ever reached this level of enlightenment and peace with the Force. Once the Emperor was defeated, Marr finally found peace and became one with the Force, his duty done. Duty, loyalty, self-reflection, adaptability. These were all things Darth Marr had that no other Sith displayed. Those were the reasons he could ally with the Jedi and why he could come to understand and embrace their perspective, crafting a unique outlook on life and the Force that brought strength to those who embraced it. More than any other Sith in the franchise, Darth Marr earned his peace and our respect. If only more Sith leaders actually cared about the Empire, maybe there wouldn't have been a new one every 3 seconds. What other Imperial figure, Sith or not, do you think was a true leader? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to